Welcome to the session in conversation with Rebecca Adlington and preventing burnout culture in the workplace. We'll start that in about 30 seconds or so. So while Becky gets herself settled, I want to remind everyone that straight after the session at 12:30, we have another 6 of our fantastic sponsors waiting and ready to run their live vendor presentations. If you are booked onto one of these smaller, more interactive sessions, you will be able to enter these at 12:30 via my itinerary, and I've been hearing that they're really, really good, so I encourage you to go along. As you've all been doing so well today, please do join in the chat on the right-hand side of the stage with your thoughts and your comments. Say hello to each other. Any insights you want to share while Becky and I are chatting. It just keeps the vibe going, keeps the interaction of this event going. If you do have any questions you'd like to ask Becky, please post it in the dedicated Ask the Speaker a Question box below, and we are going to answer as many as we can towards the end of the session. Now, I believe we're all ready, and I'm certainly very excited about what I'm about to do next. Welcome to everybody who has just joined us, and for those of you who have been with us this morning, I hope you've had a bit of a chance to move around, get a bit of a stretch. I'm now absolutely thrilled to be speaking to Becky Adlington OBE, who I'm sure you all know is a double Olympic gold medal winner for swimming. She's also Legal & General's Not a Red Card campaign ambassador. So today we're going to be discussing burnout and the pressure that many of us feel to be always on, especially those of us who are working from home or perhaps feel that our jobs are under threat. While Becky and I are chatting this morning, please do submit questions and we'll try and answer a few of them towards the end of this session. So not everybody knows what burnout is. So Becky, first question is, what's burnout to you?
I think burnout is one of those things that obviously does mean different things to different people. But to me, it can be emotional, it can be physical, or it could be mental exhaustion. It could be a combo of all three. I think it's caused, for me, it's always been caused by stress, overwork or overtraining in sport for me. And just that feeling of constantly being a little bit overwhelmed and pressured and having those such high expectations put on yourself as well.
So when you feel some of those emotions, you've probably got a bit used to it. Are there some signs that you can spot in yourself that maybe others can also bear in mind for themselves if they might not be aware of burnout at the moment?
I think for me as an athlete, it was very, very different growing up, because I think when you're a lot younger, you probably don't recognize it as such. And I certainly didn't in sport. And I think in sport, you're always kind of a little bit stressed and pressured and tired anyway. So if you're not kind of pushing your body to the limit every day and tired, well, then kind of not really doing the work. But definitely as I got older, I just would recognize signs for sure. We used to call it a little bit of adaptation or going into a hole as an athlete rather than the term burnout. But definitely physical when I was part of sport. I think that's so easy to notice in sport as well, because your times, your performances aren't there. You literally have nothing to give in the session. And it isn't just one session. I mean, we all have one bad day or one bad session, but in sport, it was kind of recognized, okay, this is going on a couple of weeks now, and I just don't have anything to give. I just feel drained all the time, and I'm sleeping enough, I'm resting, I'm doing everything you can. And I think they were things for me that I was kind of like, okay, something's a little bit different here. I need to really assess and take a step back. And to be honest, it's been a little bit the same in business, if I'm being honest with you. I think we all can recognize the signs when you are feeling an immense amount of stress or being exhausted. And I think it's one of those for me. I've definitely noticed physical changes for me. I noticed it in the past if I've not been sleeping very well. And even though you're so tired, you just feel drained all the time, and you're getting a good night's sleep, or you kind of not able to sleep even though you are super tired. I think that really affects me physically, that you can notice, but mentally and emotionally as well. I just get to the point where like I just can't be bothered. I know that seems really blunt, but I get to the point where I'm like, I just don't care. I just want to switch off. I don't want somebody to talk to me. I just want to be by myself and just digest things. And I just almost find it too much of a challenge just to have a conversation with somebody.
Mm-hmm. And I think most of us can probably recognize that, especially having come through lockdown, and many of us are still working from home. So bearing that in mind, the challenges you must have felt as well, suddenly being at home, and dealing with, being a parent and running a business and being a sports person. How did you find it? What have you done to cope over the last few months?
Do you know what? And I know everyone is different in lockdown and everyone's found this period a little bit different. I've kind of noticed a change from the start of lockdown back in March to now is very different. I found it really hard to juggle the parenting with my daughter's 5. So with her being off school, she isn't one of those that I can just give her some homework or give her something to do. She was kind of constantly wanting to play and interact, which is lovely, but then it is hard, especially when they're 5, to be like, okay, you need to play by yourself because mummy's got work to do. And that was a really difficult challenge. And it took a good couple of weeks, I'm not going to lie, to find that balance, to find a routine that because it wasn't a case of during lockdown, 9 to 5, it wasn't the same hours. And I kind of had to be adaptable and flexible with that. But I do love being at home. For me, it definitely suits me to be at home. I work much better taking little breaks often. Having my 5 minutes cup of tea just recharges me. That was really important for me as well. And just having that space to concentrate, I really like that. I sometimes get a bit distracted if I'm chatting to loads of other people. So it definitely helps with getting my work done. And I think one thing I've really tried to work on during this period is a control thing. I think every single athlete will openly admit they're a little bit of a control freak and we like to have that control. And I think that's, for me, really been evident during lockdown time, is the fact that this is just out of my control. And actually, I've had to learn to let go of that feeling. And I think everyone's had to deal with those things. But for me, I can't focus on when the venues are going to open back up or when the pools are going to open back up, because that's not up to me. And the information is so rapidly changed. But I think that's what's definitely helped me during this period, is just going, you know what? It's not up to me. Let that control go and just focus on the things that I can control and that I can do.
And one of the things that you probably have got a little bit of control over is how you equip your own team, because you're a business owner, you've got a team. How have you supported them through the last few months yourself?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's been very difficult. I mean, at the start, when we first shut, we actually closed the swimming pools a couple of days before the official full lockdown started. And I think the information was changing so rapidly. It was a very scary time. It's kind of like we couldn't put the right information out because we had just kind of worked on the right information, got the right stuff together, and then, it would change. And I think it was very hard at the start because she was so focused on, can we survive as a business? What's going to happen? What's everything else? And we kind of forgot the human side at the start. And I think we got the communication a little bit wrong. I'll openly put my hands up and say that. I think it was just, we were all in this unknown period, didn't know how long it was going to last, didn't know what was going to happen. And then after a couple of weeks, we kind of just went, you know what, everyone's people, we care about these people. Let's not talk to our customers, our employees in kind of a really formal way, because that's not how we work as a business normally. So just because now we're at home and we're kind of worried about the information being portrayed doesn't mean that we should act in that way when we don't normally. And I think it was talking to people during this time. Obviously, a lot of the employees were off on furlough for a lot of the time, but we're still trying to engage people a lot, sending out wellbeing things to the staff. And obviously now that they're all back at work, we've actually made it so when they come back, they have an introduction back into the business. And not because we think that they're now not inspired or anything else. I think it's just a case of, a lot of people have had 14, 15 weeks off. You've had your own time. You've got to just be at home and do your own thing. And actually, it's a shock to the system going back to work. And we don't want to just give people this burnout situation that we're talking about just because they're coming back to work. And now it's kind of time management and everything. I think that's been really important. The fact that had to recognize people that have been off, you can't just want them back in to just full on all these hours and stress them out even more, because that period they will have adapted to kind of being at home, and you've got to cater for that.
And then you've got the other side of people who haven't gone off, and they've probably got into this always on scenario. I imagine most people out there have done, and I know you and I had a chat, and you've been there yourself as a sports person, as a business owner, of not being able to switch off because we now live at work. We're not literally working at home. So how do you switch off? How do you cope with not becoming always on?
And I think that's definitely been a challenge from a lot of people that I've spoken to. A lot of my friends and family have actually kept working during this time. And that has been the challenge. And that has been the thing that's been at home. I found for me, like with my phone, I only have one phone. So it's not like I have a work phone to turn off in the evening. I have one laptop, one phone. And I like that. I don't like too much technology and having to look at too much. But for me, that has been the hard thing. The fact that these hours aren't normal 9 to 5. So how do we stop getting into a bed at the evening and looking at my phone and then going to sleep worrying and stressing about something that I've just read? And I think that was a really difficult challenge at the start, and definitely a balance. And I think one that you've got to find what suits you. I will not reply to a work email after like 6 o'clock unless it's really urgent, because I made that in my own head. That's what I've got to do. And I also wanted to make sure as a parent that I'm still engaging with my daughter. We're still spending this time together, that I'm kind of not letting that side of things compromise as well. And that's been my switch off, that it's been really nice to take that 5 minutes to just play a game with her, or in between a phone call or whatever it is. And I think that's been really, really important, and making sure that you do have time for yourself. It's so important that we respect each other's time. I can't expect to message someone. If I message someone at 8 o'clock at night, and how would that make them feel? So I respect that. So I try really hard not to message people past that time as well. Not even just if somebody messages me, but I want to respect other people's social own time as well.
That's a really good point, because that whole issue of techno stress is so important. And I know myself, I have one phone as well, and it's trying to divide the personal and the work, and knowing when to switch off and seeing the messages from friends but not from work, and getting that balance. But I imagine over the years you must have had huge pressure of technology and social media and things that most of us in normal day to day, even if we're running businesses, don't have. So is it the case of that you've actually landed up thinking about other people and what an impact it has on them? That's what it sounds like from your own answer. It's almost being caring for the team rather than just doing what you want to do yourself. Or is there something more to it than that?
No, I think it's finding that balance that works for you. I think for me, I understand that if I send an email at 8 o'clock at night, then somebody else is receiving that. And I just want to be conscious of that. I think it's one of those that, as much as that time might suit me, it might also add stress to somebody else, or they might look at it instead of enjoying their evening. So I just want to be conscious of that. I think it's about being just aware of it. And I think just having that in the back of your mind. And I think that's what I've tried to do. But obviously, if it's urgent and that's the only time in the day, I will always say, I'm really sorry that I'm emailing you now. Please don't reply. It's just, this is the only time I've had today because I've been with my daughter, or I've had other things to do. So I think it's just that acknowledgement. And also, I want people to know I care about them as well. It isn't just a case of, will you do this for me? It's kind of like, okay, I am conscious I'm emailing you now. I don't want to invade your personal private space, and kind of that little bit of acknowledgement for me is really, really important, because I genuinely think we should care a lot more in the business world. I think that was from the swimming world. That's what I've tried to take into business a lot more, because as a coach and swimmer environment for me growing up, my coach always cared about my human side. He recognized at times I was just a 19-year-old girl, and he kind of really catered to that. And if something was going on in my private life and it would affect my performance, we would talk about that. So I kind of want to take that a little bit into business life. I want, when I come in the morning, I say, good morning, how are you? I don't want people to just give me a generic and say, yeah, fine, how are you? I want them to know I'm genuinely asking, how are you? And genuinely caring, are you okay? What's going on? Update me if you want to talk to me. I'm here. And that's kind of just the environment that I would much prefer to work in.
And you've given some great ideas there and practical tips of this, I suppose, this rise of compassion that we're hearing more and more about in the workplace. So Are there any other sort of practical tips and ideas that you could give businesses and employers to put in place to sort of deal with the issue of burnout and always on, that will just help reduce that in the workplace a bit? So maybe some lessons that you can bring from the sporting world.
Yeah, I think one thing that was really important for me in this a swimming athlete world was having this support team around me. I carefully chose my coach, my sports scientist, everything else, and being around like-minded people, kind of knowing who my support team were, knowing which friends and family I could turn to. And that's been really important in business as well. We've got to have those supportive relationships, and you've got to be asking people kind of, yes, how are you, but also knowing who you can turn to for what different advice, because we all need help and we all need support. So getting the right team around you as well. For me, as an athlete, we've always been really routine. Everything is super structured. So for me, in business, working on that time management is equally as important, and just respecting that time. Like I said before, you've got to respect your team's time, but also your time as well. You need that time to relax and switch off and just be you and go home and forget about it. So I think that's really important, and prioritizing responsibilities, but also prioritizing your own day. Do you need to do that? Is that going to help you? Are you just trying to take on too much because you want to be seen as you're doing, but actually is that creating you to burn out because you have got too much on your plate? So setting those realistic goals. As an athlete, we would constantly set short-term, long-term goals, and I think that's really important to check in with those in business as well. It's much harder because they're not every 3 to 6 months, but I think they're definitely helpful to do.
That is really helpful. Thank you so much, Becky. It's been lovely talking to you. So, Becky, we've had a number of questions come in while we've been chatting. Sorry, there's just a slight delay on the line there as we pushed over. And one of the questions coming in from Laura Hocking, asking, have you got any team pick-me-up tips or conversation starters on resilience for managers, if the managers don't really know how to broach the topic of resilience with their teams or with individuals in their teams? You know, how do you start that conversation?
I think it's sometimes we overcomplicate things, and I think we don't always keep things as simple. And what I really like is getting the ideas and starting that conversation with not kind of you trying to do this big speech or this big spiel. I think it's much nicer if it's much more natural and just posing that question that you have exactly just said to your team. Like, what do you guys need? Or how do you guys feel? Do you feel like you've got that resilience there? Do you need support in that? And have a team conversation around it. I think it's much nicer when you try and include people. Yes, somebody could be leading that or hosting that conversation, but I think it's really important to get everyone else's take on it, because some people are just a little bit more naturally resilient than others, or are better at dealing with different situations. But I think at the same time, we can all learn from one another. And I think just by starting and putting that question towards your team, I think you'll get some brilliant feedback. And I think just having half an hour to bounce ideas off each other and have that open conversation, people will naturally feel more inspired from it.
And I've got a question coming in from Matt Peaty, and he asked about managing change. So clearly, when before you were used to years of training and competing in that routine, then you've retired as young as you are, and you've become a business owner. So that must have been a huge change in your life. So how did you manage that particular change, particularly from a burnout or that mental shift that you had to make?
I think it's that acknowledgement that this isn't going to be easy. And sometimes there were certainly days where I just felt a bit lost. And I think that acknowledgement of that is really important, that you can have days where you just go, I don't really know. And actually, I'm really struggling today, and just not feel as motivated or whatever it is. But I think we don't deal that great with change as human beings. I genuinely don't think, I certainly don't. But I think over time, when it seems like it's in your control, that sometimes feels a little bit better. So doing it in your own way, I think, can really, really help, rather than being pressured to change or kind of pushed in a direction that you're not comfortable with. So I think feeling really comfortable and confident about that change helps that being so adaptable, and talking to other people as well. I think don't be afraid to ask somebody else for advice or go to somebody. I think athletes are so used to doing that. Athletes are very used to going, how did you find retirement, or what did you do? And then you come out of business world and people don't ask those questions as not enough. And definitely talk to kind of more experienced people or more senior people that are there in the business. Definitely use their experiences.
And then we've got time for one more very quick question. Do you think that you're better equipped to handle future challenges as a result of what you've learned during lockdown?
Definitely. I think we've all learned to be more adaptable, open to change a lot more. The information just changes so rapidly. So I think we've all learned that for sure. Not necessarily because we've wanted to, but we've certainly learned it.
Right, I'm going to have to draw the session to a close. It's gone so quickly because I can see that our next sessions are about to start at 12:30. So thank you so much, Becky. That's been really, really useful session. And I must say I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. And I can imagine everybody applauding if they were in a live situation. Thanks very much, Becky. And I've just got a few things to say to the audience. So if you wouldn't mind staying with me for a second, we can let Becky go if you wish. So anybody, if you're not attending a vendor presentation now, please do go and have a look around the exhibition hall. Remember that our sponsors will be live in their video rooms during the lunch break as well at 10 to 1. Really, please do pop in and say hello. It's because of them that we're putting on this event, and they'd love to meet you and say hello and see how the day's going. I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in one of either in the exhibition hall, I'll be popping in and out. I'm also going to go into the networking lounges from 10 to 1, particularly keen to join the mindfulness room for a bit, where we have Dr. Taman running sessions at 10 to 1 and again at 20 past 1. Sadly, I don't have a pet, so it might feel out of place in the pets and peers room. If you don't know what I mean, go and have a look at my itinerary and at the choice of lunchtime rooms. Stick your head in, even if only for a minute or two, so we can all say hello to each other, perhaps over a sandwich or whatever you are having for lunch today. So thank you very much and see you a bit later.